We are live in the building. It is March. It's going down today in a few hours, in a little bit. Can't wait. All right, opening thoughts, March Madness. I'll let you guys take it from here, and then I'll jump back in.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. Brian, I'll just ask you a couple questions. I think is probably the best way to start. I guess first one, going back to Selection Sunday a little bit, when the bracket was being released, I guess any major takeaways you might have had, seedings or teams that you might have disagreed with, and then maybe what are your biggest kind of initial takeaways from how the bracket is set up, maybe a team or two that got a good draw or maybe a bad draw?
Yeah, Tennessee getting the 3 seed has been talked about a whole bunch. They were should have been in the conversation for a 1 seed. Definitely should have gotten, I think, at least that final 2 seed over Duke, but are sitting there as a 3. And I think that in turn makes the South a really interesting region because you have now an extremely strong 3 seed there on top of having solid 2 in Villanova and then Arizona, the number 2 overall seed, the second 1 seed. That's an incredibly tough draw. And you look at some teams like Colorado State in that region as well, got a 6 seed. There's some talk about them potentially being a 5. Michigan got the 11, and while there was some debate about whether they should have been in the first 4 over Indiana or not, they're a talented team as well that has a lot of high-quality wins. That South region, to me, it looks stacked. You also have 2 of the better mid-majors in UAB and Chattanooga as well. I think this region is going to be a lot of fun, should have a large number of close games. I think it could be the one chaos region this year. There's always seems to be that one. I think that region could be it. You look at Arizona. I'm sure they would have liked to have had Kansas's path to the Final Four. That's been talked about before the Midwest. But of all the 1 seeds, I think that's the easiest route. It should chalk hold down the stretch, right? Kansas, I think, has the easiest path to the Final Four where they'll be tested, but will be pretty heavy favorites in every game. I would view that as being the easiest path of any 1 seed so far.
What do you think about Gonzaga and their path? Because I think there was some talk about the Bulldogs. They obviously had the number 1 overall seed once again, but that second round game, assuming they get past Georgia State, which is also a very underseeded 16, they could very well have been a 14 seed based on injuries and things that they dealt with. But to go up against either Boise State or Memphis in that second round, I don't expect Gonzaga to lose that game by any means. But that is a test that not many number 1 seeds, let alone number 1 overall seeds, are taking. So I guess my question to you is, what do you kind of think about Gonzaga's path and the route that they have? Because I don't think it's the easiest. I definitely don't think it's the easiest of the 1 seeds.
It's not the easiest. I don't think it's the hardest either. But I don't think they were rewarded in the way you would expect the number 1 overall seed to be rewarded. If you look around the bracket, though, a lot of the 8-9 games feature 8 total really good teams and dangerous teams. Boise State, Memphis. Boise State swept the Mountain West titles. They've certainly proven themselves. Memphis has arguably as much just raw talent as any team in the field. Having them play one of them in the second round is tough. We talked about Arizona in that South region, though. TCU is a really good team. Seton Hall, when healthy, has been a really good team this year as well. I don't think we could be having the same conversation if that 8-9 matchup was in Gonzaga's region. UNC is an 8 seed. What if Gonzaga had to play UNC in the second round? Yes, it's going to be a really tough matchup for Gonzaga, assuming they get past Georgia State, which I think we were all assuming, but it's going to be a tough matchup. But I don't look at any of the other 8-9 matchups and think, oh, that's the one Gonzaga should have had, because all of them, I think, are going to present pretty interesting second round games for the 1 seeds in each respective region.
Yeah, good question. Good answer. I think almost like, no disrespect to a non-Power 5, but the fact it's not a Power 5 8-9 game, at least probably makes people feel like, oh, well, it's 2 mid-major plus. Technically, people consider Memphis a high major. There's no easy route, though, for sure.
There's not, and I don't think there should be. Right. Like, this is you get to a certain point. This is for a national championship. We all spend all the time talking about who should be in, all that stuff, where teams should be seated. This is about winning a national championship. And if you are going to be a national champion, you're going to need to beat 5 or 6 really, really good teams. And if you got to knock out Boise State or Memphis eventually, so let's do it early.
Yeah.
Right. Two of the hotter teams. I mean, Boise obviously winning a really tough Mountain West regular season and conference championship. So they're definitely playing at a high level. And then Memphis into the year, minus that last championship game against Houston, the last 6 minutes of the game. They played really well, as hot as anyone. So let's talk a little bit about this region. Shout out to Field of 68. We do have Sean Paul coming on. So to everyone that may see this from Field of 68, we're showing love. We decided to use you guys' bracket because it's so good. And yeah, let's talk about anything that jumps out of this page. Let's say matchup wise. You kind of mentioned a few. Let's each pick a matchup that kind of stands out. What do we think? And we'll eventually get to who we think will win this region. But let's pick a matchup to start. We'll start with you, Eli. What kind of jumps out to you on this one?
Well, I mean, in addition to the 8-9 game, because that's a really fun one, and 8-9s I think can kind of be sleepers at times, but I think the 4-13 Arkansas-Vermont matchup is a lot of fun. The Catamounts have been just absolutely dominant, and they won each of their America East tournament games by, I believe, over 30 points, which is something that I don't think had been done in multiple decades, and they were just rolling. And you can say what you want about the America East, but Vermont's got a really, really good team, and they've been dominant all season long, and they can shoot the ball like crazy. It's an extremely efficient offense, and I think – I don't know if it's geography or what, but I think Vermont is kind of like South Dakota State light. They're maybe not getting as much attention as South Dakota State is, but their numbers are very, very similar, and they've got pro-like talent on this roster. And I think this is a potential trap spot for Arkansas. I think given the right draw, the Razorbacks are a team that could make a run to the Elite Eight or even the Final Four if they're able to put it together. But Arkansas is not a great shooting team. They struggle to put the ball in the basket sometimes, and they manufacture points and get points off turnovers and things like that. But if Vermont is able to stay composed, they've been in the tournament plenty. They know how to compete in this in the big dance. So I don't think they're going to be fazed by this matchup. And that's a 4 versus 13. I've said a few times, 13's are the new 12 this year. I really like the 13 line. There's some intriguing teams on the 13.
Is that like a Jay-Z hip hop line? Like, I like
you can put it down, but I don't know. I think it's a fun matchup. I'm not necessarily saying Vermont's going to win. I haven't picked, and I'm like kind of wavering on it. But I'd be stunned if this is anything besides a close game.
I have the 5-12. I'll be more traditional in that sense. UConn, I think, is a very good team and a team that could get to the Sweet 16 no problem. At the same time, their offense can get stuck in the mud for long stretches. Outside of RJ Cole, Tyrese Martin, and Sonogo down low, there's not a lot of good offensive options really on that team. And we've seen them struggle when one of those three stars isn't playing up to par. They beat teams on the defensive end with the rebounding, especially in their size. When Mexico State has comparable size, has comparable rebounding metrics as well. If they're able to neutralize UConn in that area, you get somebody like Teddy Allen going. I think that's a real chance for an Aggies upset there.
Yeah, I think the Aggies, if you remember too, what was it? It's now 3 years ago, I guess now, when the last time they were in the tournament, they missed a free throw late, had the right guy get fouled, missed a free throw late, and they really could have and should have advanced in many ways. So one of those things where I think people still, I don't know, I think those guys on that team probably still feel that loss, and they've been had a chip on their shoulder. And UConn plays with a chip on their shoulder too. It's actually a cool matchup because both teams are just kind of built on that grit and toughness. So it's definitely going to be a much closer game than what people think. And just being biased to the underdog, it's hard not to go with New Mexico State on that one. But whoever wins that game, I think, will look to continue to advance because they'll just have that grit and toughness from that game. Yeah, I'm going to jump in and say this Notre Dame-Alabama matchup. I think Notre Dame, Alabama is kind of one of those teams, like you mentioned about Arkansas. They have this extreme high and this extreme low, right? And they've proven that they can kind of beat anybody. But there's something about what UCLA did last year that I feel like somebody's going to do similar. They may not go Final Four, but somebody's going to do similar from the play. And it feels like Notre Dame just getting that double overtime. If you remember, I think UCLA won in a similar game last year against Michigan State. So I'm going to say Notre Dame's going to kind of make some noise in that. But we got our man Sean Paul representing Field of 68. Since we got the bracket, it's only right to bring him in. So we'll go ahead and bring our guy in. Sean P, what up, baby?
How's it going, guys?
How you doing?
Man, we're just jumping into this West region a little bit. We're just picking one matchup before we close. You came right on time. We chose to use you guys Field of 68 Media Network bracket. So well done. I don't know. Did you do this yourself, Sean, or is that one of the guys in the back?
No, I mean there's way more talented people than me to do that. I have no idea how to make a graphic to save my life. So credit to the producers and all that, because I can't do that.
No doubt. All right, we've talked about Vermont, Arkansas. We've talked about UConn, New Mexico State. We've now talked about Alabama, Notre Dame. What's one other matchup that kind of sticks out to you in this one?
I'm gonna say Davidson, Michigan State, I guess, because it seems like it's kind of a trendy upset pick for whichever team wins that game to go beat Duke. I don't think it's gonna happen, and I think part of it is people kind of want to see Coach K leave college basketball in the round of 32. But at the end of the day, Davidson's a really good offensive team. Luka Brakovic, you have Hyunjun Lee. You have a lot of different options, and Bob McKillop's one of the best coaches in college basketball. So if Davidson's able to win that game, I think they'll struggle with Duke's physicality in the next round, but I think they'll get past Michigan State.
I like it. I like that pick. Let's all pick a player or maybe a player or two that sticks out in this region. Obviously, stars are made in the NCAA tournament. That's halfway what it's about. We've talked a lot about teams. What's one player that kind of sticks out to you? We'll start with UB. Or two. You'll get you two. You have two.
Yeah, if I had to pick one guy, I think I'm looking at JD Notae for Arkansas. Vermont is a dangerous team. They don't have anybody who could match up with JD Notae. Right? There are very few teams, even in this region, who have a guy who has that caliber of a scorer, has that ability to take over a game. If you look down their future path, he could be a difference maker against UConn if chalk holds. And then you get into that Gonzaga game, potential Sweet 16 matchup there. There is a world where Notae becomes this year's Kemba Walker, right? Where he goes off and is averaging 20, 25 a game and leads them to that upset over Gonzaga. I don't think that'll happen, but if there is some chaos caused by a single player in this region, I think Notae could be that guy.
I like it. We'll go Sean next, then we'll go Eli.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of my brand to go with mid-majors, I guess, right? So I'm going to go with Xavier Bishop from Montana State. Don't think Montana State's going to beat Texas Tech, but he's a really smooth player, 5'8", but he can shoot the basketball. He can make plays. He's a really fun player to watch. So if you're looking for a mid-major player to watch, I would definitely say Xavier Bishop fits that.
You got one more. You can have one more that's non-mid-major if you want to, or another mid-major, mid-major.
Yeah, let's go with Ben Shungu from Vermont. I mean, he's improved so much this year. It's a super senior year. I didn't see him playing the way he did this year, but Steph Smith transfers to St. John's, and Shungu made a massive jump. I mean, he's probably the best player on that team, even though Ryan Davis is really good too. Shungu really does it on both ends of the floor. So he's been really impressive this year.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick before Eli and just say Teddy Allen, big-time player, has played at that level. I just think guys like that, they get a chance in this – to match up in this kind of tournament, have a chance to blow up. So I think he's one. And then selfishly and biasly, I'm going to go Bryson Williams, former player. I was able to coach him at Fresno and at UTEP. And I think Texas Tech's going to make a deep run. And I think they have to be able to score, and they need to be able to score in the half court. And he's just good in the inside, shooting over 50% from the field. So shout out to B. Will.
Yeah, I think for my picks, Alabama's fascinating because of just their peaks and troughs this season. They can go out and beat just about anyone, and they've proven that they can lose or play close to just about anyone too. And I think a lot of that comes down to how well Javon Quinterly plays and his splits and wins and losses this season with the Crimson Tide. If he plays well, they win. If he does not play well, they don't win. And I think he's one of the most important players in this bracket. So I'm watching how he facilitates. I wouldn't be stunned if Alabama goes on a run. I also wouldn't be stunned if Alabama loses to Notre Dame. So that's an intriguing spot there. And another player who I've had my eyes on now for a couple of years is Hyunjun Lee from Davidson. He's a really intriguing guy. And if he makes a statement against Michigan State, which I could see him doing, I could see Michigan State allowing him to go for 20 or so. And he's a really efficient slasher who can do a lot of great things in the offense. I would not be surprised if he's kind of one of those mid-major guys who gets a lot of draft stock out of this tournament. And especially if he advances and plays Duke, and whether win or lose, he has another positive performance, would not be surprised to see his name appear on more mocks, just given his skill set and his length and the things that he does. So I'm really intrigued by him.
All right, final in the West. Who are you picking to win it, and who's the kind of your sleeper team in this region? I'll go first. I'm gonna go ahead and go with the Zags. I think if the Zags are ever gonna win it, I think this is a big time year for them to have a chance to do it. They have all the pieces that they need, so I'm gonna say that they win it. And my sleeper team, I don't even know if it's sleeper. I'm just gonna stick with Texas Tech. I'm gonna go with the Texas, the home team. I think their defense will carry them through this bracket, and somehow, some way, they'll end up making some noise.
I'll go with I'll stick with chalk. I have Gonzaga coming out of the region. I have them winning the national championship. I think they're the best team by far. But if you look for a potential sleeper here, I do think Davidson has a path to the Sweet 16, potentially the Elite Eight there. That to me is the one double-digit seed that could make it past the first week. And I have Mexico State beating UConn. I have Arkansas beating Vermont, but I do think it's possible that Vermont wins that game. I just don't know if either of those are able to turn that one win into two the same way I think Davidson could with their three-point shooting.
I have Duke coming out of this region over Gonzaga in the Elite Eight. I think that Duke's high is a lot higher than most other teams. And when they put it all together and they're defending well, I think they could definitely be a team capable of cutting down the nets. But I think a team that's capable of making some noise in this bracket is UConn. And I think they could go a variety of different ways. I wouldn't be stunned if they get mucked up against Mexico State and lose that one. But I also wouldn't be too shocked if RJ Cole kind of goes into a takeover mode and he is able to string some wins together and lead his team to a couple of wins. So I'm intrigued by UConn. They really know how to make things a little gritty and win from there. So I'm intrigued by them.
Yeah, battle tested in a big time Big East too. So they get past the first game, they definitely gonna make some noise. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I'm going with the same picks Eli had. I like UConn quite a bit. I don't think New Mexico State's going to beat them. They don't shoot the ball well from three. They turn the ball over. They need a big game from Teddy Allen if they're going to win. I think that's what it comes down to. And he's capable of doing that. You don't get the nickname Teddy Buckets if you're not just getting buckets constantly. So I think UConn gets to the Sweet 16. I think Gonzaga will head to the national title, and I think they'll win it. I thought they're the best team in the country all year long, and I don't really buy into the narrative that they can't beat physicality. I think they can. I mean, obviously they're not the strongest, and they're not the most physical team, but they're well coached, and they have a lot of talent. I mean, Chet Holmgren might end up still being the first pick. So I'm going to go with Gonzaga to come out of this region and win the national title. I just think they're the best team.
Yeah, I like that one. I like it. All right, let's go east. East will be a little bit more, even more intriguing in a lot of ways. So we'll jump into the East. Sean Paul, where are you watching your games? Are you watching straight from home today? Or are you going to a place that has like multiple TVs? What's your plan here, Sean?
No, I'm gonna watch at home. I'm going to watch one on my TV and then probably have one or two on my computer and phone. I just have to avoid, because when you're streaming games, it gets kind of behind, so you can see the score beforehand. So I'm going to have to find a way to navigate through that. I'm going to have to use my very great tech skills. That's a joke. I'm terrible at technology. But I'll have to find my way through it, and I'll be watching several games.
No doubt. It's probably the best way to do it. I'm going to start out at a local spot with some friends for Colorado State. Watch a team I've been able to watch closely. I live right down the street from those guys. So I'm in Texas
First game,
now.
too.
Yeah. I'm gonna hang out with some of my Texas boys before I fly home. But I'll do that for the first part. But for the rest of the tournament, I'll be at the house with the girls and watching on multiple devices and probably have people on my back. It'll be fun. Eli, what about you?
Yeah, I've got set up with Dad. We're always watching March Madness together, so we got the 4 TV setup. So we're looking forward to it. It'll be a good time.
4 TVs, man.
Yeah,
you got it going.
Yeah, we got it right.
that's a vet move right there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to work on that for next year. I just have to get all my TVs in one room. So
yeah, I think I got one TV, an iPad, and a laptop. I don't know. The fourth one may have to be my phone.
I could just run in between rooms and have games on different TVs. That's an option.
You'll get some exercise.
Yeah. Get some good cardio.
Oh man! All right, let's say player first in this one. We'll go player first. We'll go matchup next, and then kind of go favorite. What are you thinking on some players that stand out to you in this one?
I think for me, I think it has to be Jaden Ivey. I think he's such a polarizing guy, just given what he's capable of doing and some of the shortcomings that he has had, unfortunately, because he is so unbelievably talented and skilled and athletic. This could be a bracket that he takes over. It could also be a bracket where they struggle against Texas or Virginia Tech in the second round and maybe get bounced in the second round. I wouldn't be too surprised if it goes that way, but we know that this is, this is probably the last go round for Jaden Ivey in a Purdue uniform. I know he's going to want to go out with a bang. He's just that kind of exclamation point type guy. And I'm really curious to see what he does, because a lot of people know his name now, but if he blows up in this tournament, he's going to be a lock for a top 3, top 5 selection in the NBA draft. I don't see that there's any other way about it.
I like it, Eli. You got a mid-major guy for us, Eli, that you like?
Yeah, I think a mid-major guy in this region. I think, man, it's tough. I think maybe Jamari Bouye from San Francisco. He's gonna have to carry a huge load.
I figured you were gonna say that name.
Yeah. I mean, he's gonna have to carry a huge load now that Masalski's out for San Francisco. I thought they battled really well against Gonzaga in the title game to come back from, I think it was 20 or something like that, and make it a 3-possession, 2-possession game down the stretch. But he has such a high usage. He does a lot of ISO, and against the Murray State team, we know how dominant they've been this year. He's going to have to step up and deliver. His efficiency numbers have kind of dropped the last few weeks, last month or so. And he's gonna have to put together a game of his life to get past Murray State, because it's a 7 seed, but that is a team that's already won 30 games this year. It's not your typical 7 seed.
Yeah, I'm gonna ride off of what you kind of said and go KJ Williams from Murray State. I think just such an animal. He's gonna be a tough matchup, especially with the injury, like you said, to the San Francisco front court. So looking forward to that. I think he's gonna become a star in this tournament. I think Murray's gonna make a run. That Murray State-Kentucky game is going to be a super high level, if they both make it, super high level, high charged, ball out type of game. I hate that they're playing second round, but I'll stick to that part of the bracket. And I think Xavier Wheeler is going to have a big time tournament. I'm obviously biased. He's a family member more or less of mine, and recruited him back in the day, close with his dad, and just know how important point guard play is in the tournament. And I think he's a guy that, although he doesn't necessarily make a ton of threes, I just think he's going to make a ton of plays and control tempo and do what it takes for this Kentucky team to continue to advance.
Yeah, I love the Jaden Ivey pick. I won't pick that since Eli picked it, but there's not a player in the country I'd rather have with the ball in his hands in a late game situation than Jaden Ivey, because he's going to go to the basket. And you can prepare for it. You're probably not going to stop him. He's just too fast. Right. But I will say, for a high major player, I'll look at RJ Davis from UNC. I think he's really important to what they do. Even though Caleb Love's talented, I think RJ Davis is a better player at this point in their college careers. He's more efficient. He's a better shooter, turns the ball over less. I think they need big performances from RJ Davis if they're able to beat Marquette, a really tough Marquette team that kind of limped their way into the tournament. And Baylor, who, I mean, it's hard to bet against Scott Drew in what he's built in Waco, but they are really short-handed right now. So we'll see what comes of that. But for a mid-major player, I'll go with a 13 seed here from Akron, Ali. He's a really talented 6'8" player. He can handle the ball. He's not a point guard, but he can handle the ball. He can create some shots. He can really shoot the basketball. And I think if he improves more next year, I think he's the kind of guy that could be like a sleeper NBA player.
I like it. All right, let's go matchups and anything that sticks out matchup-wise that you love, Sean. We'll just keep it with you for a second.
Yeah, I mean, the matchup I'm most looking forward to, I think everybody could have predicted this probably for me, but Murray State, San Francisco. I hate that they're matched up in the first round. I really do. You couldn't have put Michigan State against Murray State or something like that.
Tell me this, Sean. I heard you talk about this. Tell me this. Do you love the fact that you know for a fact one of them is going to advance? Is that part like the consolation, or do you think they should have matched up against other high majors?
If you're looking at it positively, then you can go that route. But I'm going to look at it on the negative side of things.
Right.
I just think there's got to be a better way to do this, because we see it time and time again. The committee just doesn't give mid-majors a benefit of the doubt or anything, even one that wins 30 games. I'm fine with Murray State being a 7 seed, I guess. I think they should have been a 6 seed. I think their resume stacks up to a 6 seed. But, you're really going to put San Francisco against them. You can put a Michigan State team who has not played well against them and see what happens. Put San Francisco even against I guess they play Davidson, so that wouldn't have happened. But put them against someone else. I mean, just make that happen. But this is the most interesting game to me. And it was more interesting before Yowan Masalski was scheduled to miss this one. They're really going to need Patrick Tapia, the transfer from Duke, to be a really impactful player in this one. He's a great defensive player. And what he does, you won't see it on the stat sheet, but they're probably going to need him to pick up the scoring load a little bit. Doesn't take many shots if he's open, down low, or he's even hit a couple threes. I think he could be a really impactful player here, but I think Murray State will be able to win this one.
I like it. Eli?
I think Texas against Virginia Tech, that's an intriguing one. I think Texas is maybe not like Alabama in sorts, but we've seen their potential. I don't think it's been consistent enough. And Virginia Tech getting 11 was a surprise to me, given what their analytics and their rankings look like, because this is a top 25 team on KenPom, I want to say. And though they didn't have a resume of a top 6 seed, if they've got the predictive metrics of a top 6 seed, that's a 5 seed line difference. It doesn't take a genius to tell you that, hey, like Virginia Tech, they're a little underseeded here. So, and even aside from metrics, they've been playing exceptional lately. The way that they were able to get to the ACC tournament, I thought the win over Duke in the ACC title game was the most complete performance they've had all season long. The shots are falling. They're getting their guys to play good situational defense and get one and done stops. Virginia Tech could go on a run here, and with Purdue kind of the so-so defense that they've had, they've been spotty on that end. We know Mike Young coaches excellent perimeter shooting teams. He's been here before in this tournament. So Virginia Tech, 11 line, that's a tough spot in the tournament. So I'd be curious if Virginia Tech goes on a run here.
Hard to bet against Chris Beard, though. That's kind of where I sit on this. I had Virginia Tech to begin with, and I'm just like, man, it's Chris Beard, though. So I went with Texas. They're probably the more talented team, but I know it's probably not going to end well for me there.
Yeah, it's almost hard, like you said. Virginia Tech's definitely the hotter team. Texas just offensively, Texas has had moments, but they just haven't done a great job. So you just wonder if they can't score, is their defense going to be enough on a neutral floor? But it'll be interesting to see. I like this matchup. There's a couple matchups I would say, but I'd say the 8-9 is obviously almost always super intriguing. But I just think that Indiana-St. Mary's game, Indiana coming off of a win, there's something about, despite the travel, and I know they have to travel from Dayton all the way to Oregon or whatever it is, but just something about when you win that game and you're riding on that high and you've already done it, especially as a P5, I just think it just gives you a different kind of energy going in. So St. Mary's defense is good. I think this is one of Coach Bennett's, if not his best coaching job he's done. It's not his most talented team. He doesn't have some of the pro kind of prospects that he's had in the past, but I definitely think that matchup, Indiana just doesn't shoot it great. If they can throw a couple in, then they really have a chance. But I think that matchup, and then I picked Kentucky in this region. I just think that Oscar Tshiebwe is one of the best players in the country, and I just think they're going to play on the big stage. And then if I had to pick a sleeper team, hard not to pick Murray State because they're in the same bracket, but I'm going to go with I'm going to go Virginia Tech, even though they're not really a sleeper. I'm going to go Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I like that. I've got Kentucky coming out of this region and beating UCLA in the Elite Eight matchup. And I like Virginia Tech as my sleeper as well. Those 11 seeds usually get a good draw just based on where they're at in the bracket. And I like this draw for Virginia Tech, honestly. They've been playing so well lately.
For me, I was Kentucky to the Final Four all the way until like 2 days ago. Then I'm like, if Purdue just defends at all, they should be able to make noise in this region. They just don't defend very well. And like I said earlier, there's no player in the country I'd rather have with the ball in his hands late in the game than Jaden Ivey. You have Zach Edey and Travion Williams, who I think could give Oscar Tshiebwe some trouble. He won't be able to get all those offensive rebounds he gets against 7'4" Zach Edey. They're almost like, I think Tshiebwe's 6'8". That's like almost a foot height difference. Like not many people tower over Oscar Tshiebwe like that. So I have Purdue coming out. They just really need to defend. I'm buying in on the upside and what we've seen this year. I'm going to say my sleeper is Murray State. I don't think they beat Kentucky, but I think they make it a game because you look at that game a couple years ago, Wofford as the 7 seed against 2 seed at Kentucky. If Fletcher McGee doesn't have the worst game of his life, Wofford probably wins that game. and they're different teams in a lot of ways. You can get the ball inside more with this Murray State team, and I think they're probably more talented than that Wofford team. I really like this Murray State team, and if they beat Kentucky, I wouldn't be surprised. They have that kind of talent. You have Tevin Brown, who's going to play at the next level. You have KJ Williams, who's probably going to be like a G League guy, but he was a Conference Player of the Year. You have Juice Hill, who had 5 or 6 threes against Memphis. You have guys that defend like DJ Burns and Trey Hannibal. You just have so many different options. They don't have the athleticism of an OVC team. They have the athleticism of an SEC team. So I think they'll be able to give Kentucky a game.
I think the one part about that matchup too, and you kind of touched on it, but not only do they have like the talent to be able to be on the floor with them, but they're an in-state team. So there's going to be a different level of intensity in that game than a normal kind of mid-major or 7-2 matchup. So I do think if Murray State can kind of hang around, it'll be interesting to see if they can win that. They'll probably ride that momentum, and I definitely love them as a sleeper in that region.
It's almost got some like Wichita, Kansas feel of the Ron Baker, Fred VanVleet days. It's kind of got a little feel like that. So I'm intrigued by it.
I do have a question for you, Eli, though. This is probably something you know since you're really smart and a numbers guy for sure. Has there been a first 4 team that hasn't advanced? Like, when's the last time that happened? Like 11?
It happened, I want to say in 2019. I think it's only happened 1 year that a first 4 team didn't advance.
That was Arizona State, right? They were one of them.
And I can't remember which the other one was that year. But I think that was the only year it hasn't happened.
That's crazy. I mean, I don't want to pick against St. Mary's because betting against Randy Bennett is just not something I do. But, man, I mean, that there's some statistics there. So maybe Notre Dame does it. But, man, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I have Indiana winning that game just because I think that they've been playing better of late. I think they're capable of winning that matchup. But I don't know. There's something about I think there is something to be said about that momentum, already kind of getting a tournament win under your belt and being able to ride that a little bit. I think there's something to be said there.
Of guys that can improve their draft stock, though, just my final point on Indiana, Trace Jackson Davis might have the most to gain of anybody in the country.
Yep, I would agree with that. I like the sound of that. I think that's pretty accurate. Him playing on that first night too helps.
Oh yeah, he was dominant against a good Wyoming team.
He was dominant, and he's already kind of got that buzz. He's feeling good, and like I said, he's going to be tough for St. Mary's to deal with, even though we know how good of a coach Randy Bennett is and how good of a defensive team they are. This region feels like it's got like a ton of shakeup in it, man. It feels like it's like the shakeup region, man. Tell me overall thoughts on this region, Sean, before we jump into it.
Man, I thought I was gonna be like have a huge hot take with having Iowa to the Final Four, but I feel like that's more common than it is uncommon. So it almost makes me want to change my pick. No, just kidding. My brackets are always terrible. I've never, I love college basketball. I've never gotten a champion right. Never. Since I filled out brackets, never gotten one right. So maybe this is a year. But Iowa.
Have you only done it for a couple of years? Or have you been doing it a while?
Probably like 11 years.
Okay.
Oh, man.
So it's been a minute. It's not going well, but we'll see this year. I thought I had one a few years ago. I mean, I had Gonzaga last year, but when Oregon played UNC in that Final Four, if Oregon just rebounds a basketball, who knows? Maybe they go and win a national title. But, this region's interesting. I think Keegan Murray is a national player of the year, and I've been pretty strong on that stance for the last, 2 weeks. He's been the most consistent player in college basketball. I know Sheboy's a great player, but Keegan Murray has 25 games where he scored 20-plus points. You don't see that often in college basketball, especially from a guy in the Big Ten. He's just such a difference maker. He's great on the defensive end. And we saw the other day, there was a point in the year where he really struggled shooting. I'm not convinced he missed a shot in the Big Ten tournament. He could not miss in that stretch there. They're much improved defensively. They have Jordan Bohannon, who's so experienced. So I think Iowa is a dangerous team here, but I think Auburn's going to bow out pretty early.
I'm curious if the Iowa coaches look back and think we basically had 2 players of the year on the same team.
I mean, who thought if we were talking 5 years ago, let's say 6 years ago, so before Luka Garza was in college, would anybody think that Iowa might have back-to-back national players of the year? And Garza could have won it 2 years ago too if Iowa was a little better, because the stats were better than Obi Toppin. I think Toppin winning was the right choice because Dayton was much better. But realistically, they've had 3, Garza twice and Keegan Murray once. I mean, they've really been able to add talent. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. They were on the same team, and no one thought that he would be the player that he has been this year.
No.
I think you make a great point. I think a lot of people are screaming that right now that he should be the player of the year. So it'd be interesting to see how it all shakes out. But he definitely makes it where Iowa's a team in this region where it's like when you think about just the best player being able to will their team to a Final Four, he definitely has that kind of capability. But we'll go any order. You can go player first, you can go matchup first, you can go both at the same time. What you think, Eli?
Well, I can't make sense of the pod that includes LSU, Iowa State, and Wisconsin Colgate. I can talk myself into any of those 4 teams winning first-round games, and I can talk myself into 3 of those teams getting to the Sweet 16, just because we don't see 14 seeds get to the Sweet 16 very often. But Colgate has been in the tournament. They've had 2 recent tournament appearances, both in which they either led by double digits, which they did against Arkansas, and I believe the other one was against Auburn, if I'm not mistaken.
Tennessee, I think.
Oh, Tennessee, right. Tennessee. Yep. And they were close in that one as well. So Matt Langle's been here before, and he's got a really good shooting team. And Wisconsin with Johnny Davis and kind of the health of late, and his last shooting performance is probably his worst one. That's a shaking one. I think they do get quite a bit of a benefit from playing in their backyard. But if Colgate makes this a game, would not be surprised. And then LSU, Iowa State, I don't know what to make of this one. So you have one team that's without the head coach that started off so hot and cooled down the stretch, and then Iowa State, which has so many quality victories, but their offense is just abysmal. They've had 4 of their worst offensive performances over the last 20 years in the last 6 weeks. So
how about that matchup? They both started the year undefeated, like out of the blue. Yeah. No one expected it. Both started the year undefeated. If you look at like back on the polls, like those guys are like 2 of the top teams in the country. How crazy is that?
Yeah,
I mean, what about that Oklahoma State game? Didn't they have like 0.5 points per possession?
Oh
yeah, they've had 4 games under 0.68 points per possession in the last 6 weeks. So I don't know, because Iowa State, it wouldn't surprise me if they're able to make this like a 55-52 game against LSU, win that one, and then maybe they get Colgate in the second round, they could win that one, or they get Wisconsin with the banged up Johnny Davis, or maybe he has an off night and the supporting cast doesn't show up. Maybe they get to the Sweet 16. So I don't know what to make of that pod, but I think as far as the players that I'm interested in, I think the number one is, it's tough in this region. I had a lot of wavering back and forth. Maybe it's Matt Bradley from San Diego State. And I think the way that Creighton's been playing of late, they've been playing much better, I'd say. I think that's a really intriguing 8-9 matchup that San Diego State, if it's Matt Bradley, the good Matt Bradley that we've seen this year, he can maybe step up, take over a game, and who knows what could happen in the second round matchup against Kansas. I think he's a really important player. And then another one I'm looking at is probably Justin Minaya from Providence. I think he's been kind of a pivotal player and maybe kind of the unsung hero on this Providence team. He's done a lot of great things for the Friars this year. And they have so many situational guys on this team and guys who can defend well and hit key shots. I have Providence losing this game. I think I've bought into South Dakota State and what they've done, but Providence is one of those teams that you can't count them out because of just the ways that they've won this year. And I think Justin Minaya has played a huge role in that.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to say matchup. Give me Miami against USC. I think whoever wins that game can very well go and beat Auburn. I'm just not in on this Auburn team at all. I mean, if Wendell Green and KD Johnson played the way they have, I just don't see it. But for players, I will say high major, give me Arthur Kaluma from Creighton. He's a very talented player. I mean, he's been really impressive of late. And then mid-major, give me Zeke Mayo from South Dakota State. He's not the star of that team. He's a freshman, but he's going to be the star of that team in a couple of years. He is really good.
Yeah, I'm going to say those are good ones. I like those. I'm going to say I may go a few here. Miami's entire trio of guards. I'm going to start with them just because they're older, been there, done that. They've found a way to get in this tournament, and we've seen kind of what they're capable of. So I'm going to say kind of keep a note on them. I'm trying to think ahead. Maybe I'm kind of going the same thing with South Dakota State. I think they just have so much offensive firepower, even though this matchup with Providence is the Big East winner. I know a lot of people are talking about this game, but man, just the way that they shoot the ball is at such a high rate, one of the best in the country at it. It's just makes it where it's dangerous on a neutral floor, and you start making them, and that basket gets really big. So I'm going to go with those two, and then I'm going to go with the All-American. I think Achi has a chance to kind of like put himself in a different category as a player for Kansas, and just be, I don't know, one of the faces of this tournament. I just think he has an ability to score. I love that he got on first team as an All-American, kind of snuck in there. Wasn't somebody that people talked about as much, but as good as this Kansas team is, I just think he's a different type of bucket. And I won't say walking bucket because it's kind of getting overused, but he just has an ability to score where it's easy. And I think Kansas is going to make a run in this tournament. I actually have them picked to win this Midwest region. I think this is one of the best Kansas teams we've seen in a while, and they have depth, and they have, guys off the bench that average 18 points a game where he came from in the Pac-12. So I think this team is going to be good, and I think the All-American is going to play at an elite level and kind of be one of the faces of the tournament.
Yeah, I like Kansas out of this region too. I think the draw breaks pretty well for them based on the teams they have to play and the styles that they'd have to go up against. And Auburn, I could still see them going on a run because I think their potential is really high, but it really is going to come down to guys like Wendell Green and KD Johnson. If they don't play well, if they play like they did in the SEC tournament, they could get bounced really early. But if they're on their game, I could see Kansas Auburn lead 8.
I will say this about Auburn. I think Bruce Pearl is one of those guys in March. They won the conference early. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to play those last few games when you kind of know that you've already won it. Now, they didn't play great in the tournament. I just think that Bruce Pearl is one of those guys. He just has like another way of getting his teams to play at a high level in the tournament, playing free, playing with confidence. So I think Auburn's going to play a lot better than people think. They're going to kind of sneak in, which sounds crazy as a 2 seed, but they just played so poorly in the tournament that I think that people are kind of counting them out.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am on Auburn, but they do have the potential. I mean, they just have to get Jabari Smith the ball more. He's clearly your best player, and you have to find ways to get a potential number 1 pick the ball more. He should be leading Auburn in shots per game every single game. There's no question about that.
Right.
But my pick to come out of here is Iowa. If not, it would be Kansas. I don't buy into Auburn. I don't buy into Wisconsin like that. I don't buy into Providence. I think Iowa's the second best team in this region. So if it's not Kansas, I definitely think it's Iowa. That's going to be my pick because they're hot right now. I think they're definitely better than a 5 seed. But if Kansas gets past Iowa, then I think it'll be a Kansas cruising to the Final Four.
All right, we're going to take a quick pause before we do the last one. I'm going to let both of you answer this one. What's your favorite moment of your brackets in the past? ORU has to be one for you, Sean. So tell the ORU story one more time. And then let's let you go too.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Last year it was, I tweeted probably like 2 weeks or a week before Selection Sunday. It was the day of like the Summit League semifinals or something. Oral Roberts had just got a put back from a banner against South Dakota State. And I liked watching this team all last year. And I'm like, man, if they just get in, they have a lot of upset potential, and they were cruising against North Dakota State in the title game in the Summit League, but then they almost blew the game, and it was probably a foul at the end of the floor, so they very well could have lost that game. But I tweeted like, if Oral Roberts gets matched up with Ohio State, Oral Roberts would win. That tweet was pretty much blew up after Oral Roberts beat Ohio State. But it was more, I love Oral Roberts that last year, and it was awesome. I had them going to the Sweet 16, but it was more about Ohio State than it was anything for me, because I just didn't think that Ohio State team was very good. And I did think Oral Roberts was good, but I thought that Ohio State team was by far the weakest 2 seed.
Yeah, I mean, we both called that game. I wasn't as bold in my prediction, at least as going as far as predicting it well in advance, and also the Sweet 16. But I saw that one too, and I thought Ohio State, given what their metrics looked like for a 2 seed, they had a defense that wasn't going to force a lot of pressure. And I thought that was a good spot for Asmus and O'Banner to get shots up. And I think they had at least half of the Oral Roberts scoring. I don't think anyone else had more than 6 points in that game. So they really took over, and that was a fun spot. But I think in 2013, I had this feeling that Mercer was going to win a game. I liked that team quite a bit, and I saw, whoever they match up against, I'm picking them to win a game, and it happened to be Duke. And when the selection show came out, I was like, man, I don't know if they're going to beat Duke, but I've been talking them up for a couple weeks. I just rolled with it. Had a feeling they were going to win, and that's how it went.
It
so,
did.
So that was a fun one. That was a really fun game, and it's kind of the joy and the thrill of this bracket or this time of year is to predict some of these upsets, and we'll see if any of these come to fruition in a few hours.
Yeah, one of the best parts about March too is it doesn't matter if you've been watching all year or if you've never watched the game. You can literally fill out a bracket and have equally as good of a chance to do well. South region, last one. Again, kind of more fireworks in this region, I believe, too, with a lot of really good teams that have had success in the tournament. And then you also have teams that have had success within their conference tournament. So, yeah, player or a matchup that sticks out. I'll let anybody go first.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I think the player that sticks out to me is Malachi Branham from Ohio State. I love his skill set, and he's going to potentially be a guy who could really see his draft stock soar. And it has the last month or so with the type of performances that he's had. And even though Ohio State they have not played well, I think they're 1-4 in their last 5, but I just refuse to count this team entirely out. And they're matched up against a team that everyone's going to fall in love with again because of the Final Four run and beating Illinois last year in the second round in Loyola Chicago. That's a team that's always going to be loved by fans and people who fill out brackets. But I'm not quite ready to count out Ohio State all the way quite yet. Just with Malachi Branham and EJ Liddell, that's a really, really good duo. And I think you need 2 great guys to win in March. So I'm not saying Ohio State's going to the Sweet 16. If they make it a game against Villanova, assuming they beat Loyola, wouldn't be surprised by that, especially if Malachi Branham is playing well. And then the other one, Michigan, I think is an intriguing one here, even without Devontae Jones, which I think is a loss given how he's played of late. He had some of his best performances these last couple of weeks of the season. I still think Michigan's got a chance here to beat Colorado State in that first game. I don't think we're quite done with Michigan yet on this season. I think they've snuck their way into that 11 line. Love the way that the brackets shape out for those 11 seeds, and they've got a lot of talent. And kind of curious how Colorado State defends against Hunter Dickinson. He's maybe not had the year that people thought back in October, but he hasn't really gone anywhere either. So those are fun. 12 and 13, UAB and Chattanooga. Those are some awesome mid-majors. I don't know if they pull off the upsets necessarily. I'm sure Sean wants to highlight those a little bit, but those are 2 of my favorite mid-majors this year. They've had excellent seasons, and I'm curious how those ones unfold.
Yeah, that Chattanooga-Illinois matchup is a big one for me. I like this Chattanooga team a ton. I think they beat Illinois. They just have to find a way to stop Kofi Coburn, but they have the guys to do it. Silvio De Sousa, Avery Diggs, Josh Ianni. Even if you're not able to stop Kofi Coburn, you can at least send him to the foul line. Like, make it difficult. Make him earn his points. Don't let him get easy baskets. Don't let him get clean dunks. I think Chattanooga comes out of that game, and Malachi Smith is my player to watch there. He's 6'4", really smooth point guard. He'll back you down. He can shoot a 3, 50% from the field, 41% from 3. Really good player and one of the best guards in the country. So that's kind of the matchup and the player I would watch.
Yeah, there's a lot of matchups in this one, man. Few players that stick out. I think TCU is going to make a little bit of a run. I think they're going to win that first game. I love Mike Miles just as a guy who makes plays, and you need guys that can break down the defense and make plays in the tournament. So I'm going to pick him as one standout. Got to go with the bias. Almost, he's an honorable mention All-American, but the Mountain West Player of the Year. I think everybody's talking about Hunter Dickinson, but David Roddy, I think we forget how he's an above 40% three-point shooter. And guys like that in the tournament are so hard to match up against because do you put a big on him? Do you put a guard on him? And I think he's one of those guys on film you can't appreciate how good he is until you play against him. And he played – the bigger the game, the bigger the stage, the better he's played. And I just think he's going to play at an elite level. And I think Colorado State just getting in and kind of being able to – I don't know, last year they were so close and they've had such a year of expectation. I just think they got a lot of weight lifted off of them, and I think they're going to play at a high level this morning to start out. And then, then my teams, man, so many teams matchup-wise. I love Houston just because Kelvin Sampson's another one of those guys in March that just has a way. They're a little bit thin. I do think they have an intriguing matchup, though. Jelly Walker is a really good player for UAB. UAB has an older team with a ton of transfers that is not going to be scared to play against Houston, and they also have kind of a gritty style of how they play, even though they play faster. So that's going to be an intriguing matchup. I do like Tennessee just to make a run because I think they're playing their best ball of the year, and I think that battle-tested SEC probably doesn't get talked about enough how well that they are. And then I'll just throw out, I don't know, for some reason, I think this Villanova team, having Gillespie for as long as they've had him, I feel like they're going to make a little bit of a run too. So I actually picked Arizona. They obviously need to get healthy, but that's kind of my matchup and picks.
Yeah, I mean, to come out of here, I'm going Arizona for sure. Even if Kirk Reese is not 100% healthy, it's a real luxury to have a guy like Dalen Terry who can go run that point for you. They do everything well. They can shoot the ball. They're great defensively. They're great offensively. They play fast. Give me the Wildcats to come out of this region.
I like it.
I love Arizona. I think they've had a great year. I just don't see it. I think this region is just so stacked, and the individuals.
You're the West Coast guy, Eli. Come on, what are we doing?
I know. I think this is a tough draw for Arizona. The types of teams that they're going to have to play, whether it's TCU or Seton Hall in the second round, those are two teams that could potentially rough up Arizona a little bit. And I still think I'm not done believing in this Houston team. Even after the losses, they've still been dominant. And I think the way that they closed out the year, being able to have a really resilient effort against Memphis and kind of show their toughness and their grit was something that I needed to see out of them. But if they're still a top 5 team nationally in a number of metrics and their advanced efficiencies and things like that, to be on a 5 line, a lot of people have them dumped in the second round against Illinois. I'm not quite ready to do that yet. So I've got Houston going to the Elite 8 out of this region, but I've got Tennessee coming out of the region as a whole. I think that ever since they went to kind of a 3-guard lineup, I've been kind of falling in love with this team, even though I was low on them from the start. But they've been able to put points on the board, which is something they struggled with early in the year, and I think they're defending at a high level. They've got a lot of veterans, and Zakai Ziegler, the freshman's been awesome since he's come on. I don't think people thought he was going to be as good as he has been. And I've got Tennessee coming out of this region. I really like this Vols roster.
I like it. That's all the bracket stuff. Any funny stories you got for us? We'll ask at the end. We always got to end with funny stories, Sean. So, but any overall thoughts on this tournament compared to ones in the past? It does feel like there's not a clear-cut favorite. So in some ways, I hate to pick because I just want to watch and just enjoy it. But this definitely feels like it's as wide open as it's been. I think even like that Saturday, where all 6 of the top teams lost on the same day, is just kind of evidence of like how this tournament feels like it can go. It can be where you can have 2 legitimate mid-majors in the Final Four again. It just feels like one of those years it could be that. But the extra year for players, I think it's something to watch. I think the transfer portal guys, I think all of that just factors in. You think about that Texas Tech team that made a run that wasn't great necessarily roster-wise, but they had those 2 grad transfers that kind of helped carry the way. I don't know. I think it's going to be an intriguing tournament more than we've seen in the past. So that's kind of my overall thoughts. I'll let you guys go.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that sticks out with this bracket is how many high-level players are on lower-seeded teams. And pretty much every team – I can't say it is every team, but most teams that are seeded 11th or worse in this bracket have a high major transfer on their roster. Yep. I'm thinking about Teddy Allen at New Mexico State. The South region is filled with them. Jelly Walker, Silvio De Sousa, Isaiah Wilkins on Longwood. There are so many players that are talented guys who played at the highest level and have now transferred down, so to speak, and are playing for tournament teams. So I don't know if that lends its way to more upsets in this bracket, but you have a lot of guys who aren't going to be fazed by the big moment. I think we've seen a lot of teams in the past that they might have great metrics, they might have had a dominant year, but you can kind of tell that they haven't played a caliber of a 4 seed or 3 seed all season long. These guys have battled in the Big Ten or the SEC or the what have you. And so I don't think they're going to be afraid of the moment. So I think it lends its way to some really great first-round matchups. Whether it's more upsets or not, I don't know. But there's some awesome talent on these lower-level teams.
Yeah, I think this is a big year for Gonzaga just because, I think they will win it. But if they don't, then the narrative of them not being able to win one continues. So I think they've really this is a big year for them to be able to come out with the national title.
Do you have them winning the whole thing, Sean?
Yeah.
Nice. It might be your year to finally get that that illustrious title. What do
We'll
you
see.
have? What do you have, Eli? I didn't pick a champion, to be honest.
I've got Kansas winning it this year. They've been kind of the sleeper. I think if David McCormick plays well enough, it doesn't fade away. I think if he plays well enough, then they've got a chance to cut down the nets.
Yeah, I think in my one bracket, I think I did put Kansas, but I kind of went back and let's just wait. So unofficially, I have not decided. But all right, any funny stories you got for us from the year that you can share with us, Eli, Sean? I was trying to think of one myself real quick before we close.
Man,
College basketball moment, prediction moment, going to a game, logging on, getting onto a StreamYard or a Zoom and things not working out.
I've got one for you. So November, and I was at a CLU game with my girlfriend. We were watching them see Morgan State play. Just one of those early season matchups, and that is the third smallest gym in the country. They seat 999 at capacity, and this is a game against a lower level team, so it wasn't very filled. So we're just sitting courtside, and this guy comes by, and he asked if I wanted to take part in the halftime show. And I was like, sure, I guess. So of course, like they're egging me on, like, "Oh, yeah, come on, Eli," and everything like that. So the halftime show, so to speak, was just a game of bump, really, and the winner got a CLU goodie bag. So I got like an Elgin Baylor bobblehead and a CLU blanket and things like that. So I went out and played bump, and I had a couple shots. And I went.
Is bump like knockout? Is bump knockout?
Yeah, knockout. I guess it's a regional thing. So we call it bump in my neck of the woods. But so I ended up winning and got the goodie bag and things like that. And I went back to watch because the Wax got their whole ESPN Plus thing, and you can just see me go on during the halftime, and they've got the live camera and hitting a couple shots on ESPN Plus. So that's my funny story of the year. I hit a couple shots in a D1 gym this season on ESPN Plus. That's
a good one. We gotta go back and get that footage.
And you can assess my jumper then.
Yeah, I don't think I have any really funny stories I can think of.
I can throw a couple and let you think. I got one that's kind of, well, neither one of them are super funny, but I'm going to go with it anyway. All right, so first, in the beginning of the year, me and Kevin are doing a bunch of recordings of like kind of some top 25 teams and some kind of higher level teams that have some stories. And we're doing like back-to-back, which we didn't really do this year. Like COVID year, we did back-to-back all the time. Well, we interview, and I'll give this funny one for you, Terrence Rencher. We interviewed Terrence Rencher for 30 minutes, and it's probably 25, but probably about 15 minutes in, I texted Kevin and said, I forgot to push record.
Oh, no.
So we did the whole interview. And obviously, if you remember at that time, Oklahoma State, it was a big deal that they didn't get in the tournament. They just found out the day before, maybe 2 days before, that they were going to be. So it was like this great interview. Rencher killed it. And it's like, I had to tell him afterwards, like, man, we might have to do that one again. Like something happened. And I couldn't tell him. I didn't have the heart to tell him I didn't push record. So yeah, that's my funny one. And then I have another one real quick. My first media pass experience. Shout out to Brandon Goebel. He gets me a media pass. I go watch BYU play Utah State. I have no idea what a media pass even is, to be honest. I'm so used to being on the sideline coaching. I don't know what a media pass is. And then not only that, not only from the sideline coaching, but just watching the game in the stands. So at halftime, the gentleman I was with my wife and kind of a business mentor of ours that graduated from BYU, family friend. He takes me to the place where you get the media pass. So I get the media pass. I'm like, all right, it's got all access on it. I'm like, this is quite an extravaganza we got here. So I have no idea where I'm supposed to sit. They literally walked me to the edge of the court side. So I end up sitting. If you've been in BYU's gym, they kind of have these kind of bleacher-like small court-side seats. So I just kind of like sit in one, and then somebody comes, and I keep scooting over, and finally by about 10 minutes in, I finally got to a spot where nobody was coming, and I just like posted up, and I was like, man, this media life ain't so bad after all, man. You get seats like this. So 2 funny quick stories.
Yeah, I mean, I got my first media pass experience this year too. I saw Colorado State and Boise State play Nevada. So that was pretty cool. Not really funny, but pretty cool, I would say. And then Yeah, and then I'm going to the.
Now, what was on it? It was a Sean Paul. Did you just say basketball expert, or was it Field of 68?
For that one, it was Mountain West Wire.
I like it.
Yeah, and then for the in I guess less than 2 weeks from now, I'm going to New Orleans to go cover the Final Four. So
let's go.
Excited.
So last final thought. A highlight from this year, Sean. Obviously, we'll start with you, and then Eli will go to you. But to be able to go from where you were a year ago, for all of us, really, to be honest, to where we are now in college basketball is a cool thing. So I'd love to be able to say that story real quick, whatever you have, of just like kind of your started from the bottom, now we're here moment.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really just being able to work with Jeff Goodman and Rob Doster. I mean, those guys have done so much for me, and they're real mentors to me. So the fact that they're letting me contribute on their network really has been the experience of a lifetime, and now I get to go cover a Final Four. So this is I never expected any of that to happen, but it's been a real honor to be able to help on the Field of 68.
No doubt, you killed it too. I love that you're the mid-major expert, man, and it only fits because you know everybody's roster without even looking at it off the top of your head. You know stats, numbers, birthdays.
Yeah, I'm not good at knowing. Like, if you talk to any teacher I had in school, I was bad at remembering stuff then. But tell me some college basketball stuff, or ask me some college basketball stuff, and I think I'm good there.
No doubt.
I needed that class in school. I would have done great.
They didn't want to give you that one.
Oh, man. Yeah, I think for us with Heat Check CBB this year, I think it was a really good year and felt more organized and like we knew what we were doing. I think just everyone's really stepped up and done an awesome job. And I think going down to Vegas for Maui Invitational, which was a really cool experience growing up watching that event. And being able to experience that and all the allure of that was really fun. And just been a good year of creating new stuff and just being passionate about what we're doing. And I'm heading down to New Orleans here in a couple of weeks too to cover the Final Four, which it's fun to say now, but I think like it's gonna be surreal when it's actually there when we're in the building doing that. So best is yet to come for sure. But it's been an awesome season covering this with you guys and watching this all grow. It's been a really fun experience.
No doubt. I can think of two with both of you. Like the magazine, Eli, was a big deal. Just seeing like how that came out and how big time it was, and the reception was a super cool thing. And then Sean, man, I just think like obviously I remember this last year, but like I think you may have been so hype of like 2,000 followers. Not that that's a bad thing. That's a good thing.
I was crazy hype when I got 100 followers.
I know. I'm saying. I think it might have been 1,000 or 2,000. I just remember thinking like, man, and the next thing you know, like not only is he on Field of 68, but I mean, just has been killing it all season, and it's been cool to see, like, yeah, just from where everybody was during the pandemic to like now stepping into these new spaces has been super cool. Yeah, for me, I think probably one that sticks out is pretty cool is that whenever Kevin came out here to do a story on David Roddy and Brian, who was on the show, who just had to go. We all got to like be at the game and do a live thing on the court. Now we weren't on Field of 68 level with production cameras and the whole nine, but it was a fun game to go to. It was fun to be able to make a road trip. Kevin came with me to Wyoming, and then we watched the CSU game. We got 2 court storms back to back. So that was just a cool thing because you're doing it in person. You're not just doing everything virtual. You know, you got to hang out with some of the guys in person, and then yeah, probably just the broadcasting thing for me. I had no idea I would be broadcasting for Mountain West first place games, let alone Northern Colorado. So just to be able to do 25 games this year and got to do my brother's NCAA tournament game. So been a blessing, man. We're going to keep building this thing, keep having fun. It's almost time, so go enjoy the tip-off. Appreciate y'all boys, and I'll see you guys in New Orleans.
Sounds good, man.